Good morning, guys. Today we're going to try to tackle an exhaust leak in our 2004 Toyota Matrix with a 1.8 liter engine. I believe this will apply to any of the Toyotas in that era, the Toyota Matrix, the Pontiac Vibe, and the Toyota Corolla with a 1.8 liter engine. What happens is when you're in the car, if you're at a stoplight or a stop sign, or just idling it in your driveway, warming it up in the morning or something, you'll smell an exhaust leak or exhaust smell when you have the fan on, especially on those cooler days when you've got when you're trying to heat the air up inside the cabin, get a little warm air going. From what I've been told, this is a result of the exhaust gasket between the exhaust manifold and then where the tailpipe goes into the rest of the car, back to your catalytic converter and all that kind of stuff. There's just two bolts on a flange, one on each side, that are spring-loaded that hold the pipe onto the exhaust manifold. And because these engines, you got your older ones, you'll have your motor mounts that wear, and the parts all vibrate and stuff like that. It vibrates that exhaust gasket and will just wear it thin, and you'll get exhaust gases leaking past it. I think it's pretty, for Toyota, I think it's probably a pretty crappy design. I'd rather see solid bolts where this can't happen. But it is what it is, and we are here today to try to fix that. Let me show you where we're going to be working, and I'll show you the parts that I've got that we will try to install and see how it goes. Okay, I'm looking from above the car right now, as you can tell, and if I look down in there, there's a spring bolt on this side, and there will be one on the other side that you can see just peeking out there. These don't look to be in too bad of a shape, so I might get lucky. The bolt on the back side has a tendency to get really rusty. Of course, it's exhaust, heat, and stuff like that. And if you're in an area that I'm in, where there's road salt, this will get bonded together, so it's pretty hard to take out. We're going to try to get down there, and you can access it from below pretty easily. Might need an extension to remove that, and I think it's just a 14 millimeter bolt. I'm not sure. I'll double check that and let you guys know. So I need to take those two spring-loaded bolts out and then push the exhaust back a little bit and let that exhaust gasket drop out from there, and then put a new one in, and I'm going to put new spring-loaded bolts. I'll show you what I got for that. Okay, if the auto parts store, AutoZone, and Rock Auto, and all that, and Amazon, and everything is all correct, I'm using the Felpro gasket 61106 for this engine. It says it's for a 1M ZFE instead of a whatever this engine is, but everybody says this works. It's listed as the correct part everywhere I go for this car. And AutoZone, I've seen reviews from people that have put it in a Matrix and say that it works beautifully. So we're going to try this. The bolts that I have are multi-part bolts. I've got the bolt, I've got a sleeve here which lets it bottom out only a specific amount, so that the spring tension is accurate on it, and there are some washers there that go over the head of these bolts, between the head of these bolts and here, I do believe, to keep it all in check. So we're going to try to install this. First thing I want to do is get the car up in the air, and I'm just going to put it up on ramps to do this, because I think that's going to give me plenty of room to work, and it would be easy to do. So let me get that done. Alright, so I am under the car right now. I don't know if you can see it, I'm shaking, holding the camera. I got one of the bolts out.
So I just need this one on this side, and it did come out pretty cleanly. That does not look too bad, so I imagine this has been serviced before. What I'm using is just this. Let me get you settled so you can see and prop this up. I am on ramps, as you can see. I got wheel stops on the back, and I've just got my Anna and whatever the hell that name is. I just recently bought this thing for, they normally go for $100 on Amazon, and I got it on a special deal for like $66 or something. And I only have a 6-inch extension. I could have used my breaker bar if I needed to as an extra extension because it is socketed on the back. But it popped it off pretty quickly. So we're going to try to get this up in here on the other side. And I'll try to take you guys along for the ride because I can't half see what I'm doing here without a light. And that came right off. Look at that. Nice. Okay, so exhaust is still a little bit hot from moving it, so I'm going to wait till it cools a little bit. I might have to take off those hangers right there. Not real sure. But I really just have to pry this back a little bit so I can get that gasket out. And it's quite warm right now, so I'm going to let it sit for a little while and cool off, and then we'll come back to this. Okay, here's my old bolts, and there's the new ones right there. One of the things that I think might have been happening is, if you look at this, the head of this bolt is has this retainer piece here that's built in. It's kind of worn away, but if and it sits on that as a shelf to keep it from popping off the end. But as I look, this bottoms out at this piece right here when you screw it in, and it should slightly compress this spring. Of course, when you put the gasket in, it's going to stick out a little bit further anyway. But the spring is right dead even with where it bottoms out. So I don't think it was really giving it a huge amount of compression. I think over time the spring just gets weak in these sometimes. See, that one's the exact same way. It's set itself right dead even with that shelf. So when this bottoms out, the spring may not have a huge amount of tension on it. Of course, like I said, there is gap between the two flange pieces because of this. So it is going to compress, but you know, I think it should be more like this, where it's not a huge amount, but you see that where it bottoms out is a good 1/8 of an inch or so below the lip of the spring, maybe even 3/16 or so. So this spring is going to hold more tension on this exhaust flange or exhaust gasket. Well, the flange too, which presses against the gasket. So I think that might be part of what causes these leaks, or at least in my case as well. So I'm glad I got new bolts. The bolts are only a few bucks. Combined, you can get this whole kit for under 20 bucks. So it's not bad at all. So I think I'm going to get a pair of gloves and see if I can brave the heat and get up under there and get that old gasket out and put the new one in. Well, I'm still waiting for that catalytic converter to cool down because it gets hot and it stays hot a lot longer than I thought it would stay. And it's such a tight spot I can't get in there really good with gloved hands, and I was trying to feel around to get the old gasket out. And I think part of my biggest issue was I'm not finding an old gasket at all. I think that might have caused some issues. So this exhaust, it had that little bit of an exhaust sound to it, like a puffing. You know how an exhaust leak sounds when you've got a hole in your exhaust. Not super loud, just kind of a puffing sound. I don't think that's going to be there. I think this car's going to be a lot quieter when I get done. So I'm just going to let it cool off a little bit so I can get my hands up in there without gloves, so I can place that gasket in there, and then I'll put my bolts in and tighten it back down. Okay, so what I ended up doing is taking the exhaust off of the hangers, the rubber hangers back there, so it would not have tension on it. And then I was able to get up in here a little bit better. And if you can see, I can't see what you're seeing all that good. But if I do get up in here at the right angle, yeah, see, there is a bit of gasket left on there, actually. You can see right there, there is some gasket, and it is absolutely mangled. So let me try to get that off. I've got a little screwdriver. I'm going to get up there and try to pry that off. Then I can make sure the new one fits. The flat side goes against the engine, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, I was wrong. There was a gasket up in there. There was just so little of it, I couldn't see it at first. But I showed you. I corrected that. This is the old gasket. I mean, look at them next to each other. Big difference. I don't know if this is the Felpro version or not. They do look to be the same diameter and everything. So that part is good. That part matches. So now I've got to set this in there with this side, the flat side, toward the engine, as that part of the flange is flat and it pushes it up into the taper of the exhaust. So I've just got to get that in, set on that spot, and then the screws put back in and started. And that's it. That was a pain to get off. I had to take my screwdriver and pry this thing off. You can see where I destroyed it there, but man, this thing was in bad shape. No wonder I got exhaust leak. All right, so I've got my gasket in place, and I got my bolts in, and I don't have one side tightened down all the way or the other. You want to tighten a little bit on one side and then a little bit on the other side to draw these in fully. I'm going to flip the camera and see if I can get up in there and take a picture of the gasket, but it feels like it's in good and even. Alright guys, so there are the old bolts and what remains of that old gasket there. The new bolts, when I put those in, seemed like it took forever to go in because they were longer bolts, and I kept thinking, am I punching through something? But no, they were just longer bolts. So let's fire this puppy up and see what she sounds like. Ooh, no more exhaust sound. I don't hear that, just that engine. So, I think we can say we have successfully repaired the exhaust leak on this car now. And I'm going to be much happier. Winter is coming. You're not able to roll the windows down. And I'm going to be driving this as a beater. I got this for my daughter to learn how to drive on so she would have a car. But while she's still learning, I'm going to use this as a winter beater as well. And I don't want to be breathing those exhaust fumes in either. So now I can enjoy it a little bit. Off to something new. See you guys later.